This is the verse that I was looking at. So I always feel like, we need to go back to biblical roots to figure out what our game plan should be. And I love this one because it talks about she prepares her food in the summer and provision for her harvest. And that's how I feel is, a lot of what I do is preserving and prepping and getting ready for these colder months. And I love to do that. I feel like it's just kind of innate in a lot of us. So this is my family, a little bit younger when we were rafting. As you can see now, my daughter, I don't know if you saw my daughter, she's taller than me, and my son is over 6 foot. So the first thing is I went through several ways of making a difference in your budget, both in your monetary budget, but also in your health and your food and investing in this. So one of the first things that I learned is I was a part of Western A Price, and I sort of still am right now. And we there were different principles that I learned on my health journey with my daughter. She had a lot of health issues. And one of the first things that I learned was doing bone broth. And bone broth is something that was used through the centuries and different cultures. You look at the Asian, they had their fish bone broth. And then, of course, like the French would have theirs for all of their sauces and everything. So it's actually very nutrient dense and it's super easy to make. So, one of the things that I like to do is I love to do Instant Pot, but you could do this in a regular slow cooker or whatever. Is I cook one or two whole chickens along with whatever veggies we're going to have for dinner. We eat that, and then right away in the same pot, we stick back in our bones and our skin and all of that. And then I always save in a plastic bag in the freezer. Anytime that we are doing, we have veggie scraps like celery or onions, sweet potatoes are great. Anything like that. You don't want to put anything that's going to be too strong. Like I would never put cabbage, or you don't want to do anything that is going bad either, because you're going to have this. You're going to be ingesting this. I also add seaweed for iodine. I've had thyroid issues, and so I do try to find natural sources of iodine. And usually I put apple cider vinegar on the bones and then wait 30 minutes. And then I fill it with water, the Instant Pot with water, and set to high for the longest period of time. And then in the morning, I strain everything and I've got bone broth for the next about week or two. I typically do that about 2 weeks at a time. And I try to use my broth throughout the week. And then what I do is I actually save the bones and I do my own dog food. And so I just go ahead and put that through the blender, and then I can use that so it's small enough for her, and it's still got a lot of protein and pieces of meat, because there's a lot of stuff that, you can't use with chicken. And so that's all in there, and that goes into her dog food. So I use this for lots of nutritious soups and chilies. Anytime we have sauces, any kind of savory dishes really is what we use this for. And we pull it out. And even like when I do, like I made a breakfast type thing this morning, I needed a little bit of moisture. So I just grabbed the broth to get a little bit more in. When we do rice or any kind of grains as well, it works really well in there. And feel free to stop me if you have any questions. Okay, so we do a lot of hearty homemade soups and stews and Asian dishes, especially in the winter. And I kind of like, the fall season is coming. I don't know if it gets really as cold over there where you are, but here we start to, this is actually a year where it's a little bit, the winter's coming in a little bit later. So fortunately, so I always recommend freezing large batches and making big batches when appropriate. And then anytime we have extras, I put them into small containers for people to take for lunches. And then I usually try to do one big container for us to have for lunch to heat up for the next, it doesn't have to be the next day, but within the next week. So some of the things that we love to do is green and red Thai curry, and you can put any kind of veggies, meat in there that you want. I try to do lots of variations. Indian dishes like butter chicken is one of my favorites, and kormas. We love like a Filipino pho. If you've ever had that, it usually comes in a really big bowl with noodles, and I don't always do the noodles, but my kids love the noodles. And basically, you cook the it's with bone, so it's kind of like a bone broth that you're making, with onions and apples and star of anise and cinnamon. It has all these wonderful flavors in it. And then once you do the soup, you cook the meat in it for a little bit, and then you just go ahead and put on your bean sprouts. And I usually do my own bean sprouts, so you can easily grow bean sprouts at home. And I might do a post on that at some point. Fresh Thai basil and lime, and usually sriracha. It's really good. It's a good meal. I do a lot of cabbage dishes because cabbage we can get from our farm here locally. So I freeze it and I store lots of cabbage because it'll go for quite a while in the refrigerator, or you can also put it in coolers. You do have to be careful that it doesn't get moldy. Um, so we do a lot of green chili. We actually go to one farm that's 2 hours north of here, and then we go to a different farm or farm area that's 1 hour south of us to get all of our green chili. I'm from New Mexico, so I like my green chili. So we do a lot of enchiladas because my kids love enchiladas, tortilla soup, sopa de verde, and all of that. So I'm trying to be careful right now with not doing a lot of grains, but I do cook that for my children and my husband, of course. We do a lot of like pumpkin soup and butternut squash soup. And there I have a recipe where I actually turn it into what seems like a cheese sauce. There's some Parmesan cheese in it, and I use that instead of mac and cheese for my kids for years. And everybody that's tried it, even kids that were really picky, would come over. They're like, "Oh, if I want to try it." I'm like, just try it. And if they would have it with pasta, if they were a kid, they would usually like it. So it's just a healthier way to get that. And I love to get lots of pumpkins and squashes, winter squashes, because they store so well. I have many of them that store all the way through the next season. Like I've just finished up the last of my spaghetti squash that we got last year, so it stores really well here. Um, and then I do a lot of like vegetarian type soups as well. We do a September soup. I just had a whole bushel of bell peppers that we have from the farm, and we love to roast those with red onion and tomatoes, and then make a soup with that. Do a lot of hamburger soup. My kids love this one. My son actually does canning. He cans his own pickles, which I'm so proud of him because he loves pickles, are one of his favorite things. So we do a hamburger soup where we put lettuce and tomato on the soup, and then the kids get to put mayonnaise and ketchup or whatever they want, mustard, of course, pickles, green chili, whatever you'd put on a regular soup. Sometimes I put sesame seeds on there, and they just love it. It's kind of a fun one. Um, and then we do Korean bibimbap, which is it's usually served over rice, but you don't have to serve it over rice. And you cook your own meat and veggies. And a lot of times I'll let the kids do it, or I'll do it for them. We do mushrooms and all sorts of veggies. And then usually, at least most of us like to have an egg, a cooked egg on there. And then you just mix it all in with sriracha, and it's really good. I do a lot of eggplant stuff, like eggplant soup, or I'll even do like eggplant little pizzas. So to stretch meals and add a lot of nutrition, we use a lot of beans and legumes. That adds a lot of fiber, so it's really healthy for your gut. That's one thing my kids have never had an issue with constipation unless we were traveling. Um, but I will say that that beans, especially black beans, have very high. I think they're the highest for soluble and insoluble fiber. So they are great for that, and they have a lot of other nutrients in it. So what I do is I make big batches of beans, and then I put them on cookie sheets. I put like little piles of them, so it's almost like cookies on um, parchment paper. And then that way I just flash freeze them, and then I pop them off, almost like I said, frozen cookies. And then I just put them in Ziploc bags so I can grab them as I'm making breakfast. I can grab them as I'm making a soup. And I usually buy my beans in bulk. So I'm buying like 25 pounds of dried beans at a time. And it's very cost efficient. Um, and so we find vegetables that store easily and that we can use for many meals. So I know during COVID, I had a friend that said, okay, I'm going to go to this big grocery store that's like a chef store. She's like, what can I get you? And I was like, okay, well, I'm not sure how often we're going to get to go to the grocery store during COVID. This is when it first happened. I said, get me a thing of cabbage. So she ended up getting like this big bag of cabbages, I guess, for restaurants. And it was like 15 cabbages, which I do a lot of cabbage, but that was a lot. And so those kinds of things are going to store well. Onions and potatoes, we store potatoes really easily in coolers in our garage. And onions, a lot of times we'll lay them out so that they get enough air. They do like it a little bit cooler, and I don't have a cool space in my house. So I will also ferment onions as well. And then, using extra grains or whatever it might be, if you can eat grains in your meals. I love black barley and like wild rice. Wild rice is just so healthy, and just whatever we can do to mix it up and make it interesting and different. So I buy a lot in bulk. Of course, Costco, they've got a lot of organic options, but Azure is great. I do a lot of my large bulk, like I will buy 50 pound bags of oats. Like I'll get 3 50 pound bags of oats to kind of stock up for the winter because I use it also for um, not only for meals, but I have chickens as well. And so I know there's different food that I can feed animals with as well, right? I love to do things like get bulk honey, especially local honey. So local honey tends to be a little bit more expensive, but it has so many more amazing properties and it's not adulterated. So maple syrup, usually I have a maple syrup guy that comes down from Wisconsin, and I'll usually get a gallon or two of maple syrup, and that stores really well, even in the refrigerator for it'll go for over a year. And then all my flours and wheat berries, spices, all those kind of things. If you buy them in bulk, especially because I'm trying to buy as much as I can organic, it's just going to save you so much more money. Tea, whatever it might be. We also try to buy meat in bulk. Actually, we just had a friend that butchered a cow. So we feel kind of bad we're eating their cow, but we got, we got part of it, and our freezer is now full. And I really encourage like just reaching out and finding those ranchers and farmers and supporting them. I know where we got. I'm pointing to our where our dog would be outside usually. The breeder of our dog, she raises hogs. She also does cows as well. But I saw her put up a quick note like, okay, I just butchered a hog. I'm driving through your city, do you want to meet me and I'll get you, you can buy a little bit off of me because normally you have to buy like half of a hog or whatever. And so unfortunately I was busy that day, but like making those connections, we have actually a signal group with quite a few people in our area. And so we'll split things or let people know, oh, this is, big sale that's going on, or this ranch is doing this or whatever it might be so that we can support them. Um, and then we also buy through a meat service about 6 months worth of meat at a time, and then they charge us monthly. And my husband loves that because my husband and my son are huge meat eaters, and they like the steaks and everything that you get from that. We get chicken, lamb, all different cuts of everything, fish, salmon through that. And it's pretty economical to do it that way as opposed to if we were buying everything separately. And then I've got everything stocked up. I like to avoid going to the grocery store if I can. So anyway, and then also purchasing even pet food in bulk. Like I try to get we have a group that does like a chicken feed buy, and so we all go in together and get that, and we make sure we actually found a farm that formulated chicken feed for us without soy and without the other stuff, that canola oil and those kinds of things, and that's hard to find. So we were all able to work together and get like a semi truck load full, and then I have enough for several months. Okay, so I always say take advantage of fall harvest. You can see our canned goods up there. We do a lot of canning. I usually can around at least 200 jars a year. You can see peaches and apple butter and pickles, and then I do a lot of meals, and then green beans and those kinds of things. So I love it that we can go to our farm and pick our own food. So you can negotiate with farmers a lot of times, and especially towards the end of the season they don't want to lose all their crop, that they don't want it to go to waste, so they would rather give you a good deal. And I know our farm, one of the reasons why I support them is that at the end of the season they actually let widows come for free and pick as much as they want and take as much food as they want. And so I'd rather go and support a farm that is doing something like that. I know they're not spraying. I've worked with them for over a decade. We get to go out there and see, where their kids are playing and where their chickens are, and you know it's just so much fun to go out there and pick. I mean, it's work. I won't lie. You're out in the sun, but my kids look forward to it every year. And then we have that appreciation for where our food comes from, running out there and like, what is that? Oh, that's Brussels sprouts. Okay, that's how Brussels sprout plant looks. And figuring all that out. Oh, wow, that's how cauliflower grows. Okay, that's small cauliflower. And so it's just so huge. Not only are we educating our kids, we're actually stockpiling food for ourselves. I also recommend talking to farmers, especially at farmers market. If you go at the end of the day, well, go in the morning if you want the best options, which is when I go because I'm very particular because I'm going to be canning food and everything and before they sell out. But also at the end of the day, they don't want to bring that stuff back to the farm. And usually it's, well, at least the one I work with, it's not the actual farmer. He has people doing it. So if you go up there and say, okay, I'm willing to pay this much, can you give me, whatever, or you can actually barter with them and really get prices down. And sometimes I've had them even like, oh, Amy, you've been here for years, we're just going to give this to you for free, even though I already have like two other boxes of it, right? So it really pays to make those relationships. Okay, I talked about that. Apples will store. I usually get a couple cases of apples. We have an apple tree, but it gets a lot of worms. So I do what I can with those apples. We actually just processed a whole box of our own apples. But then I usually I work with a lady who gets apples in from Washington with an organic farm over there. And then I usually get two or three cases. And then you can put them in the refrigerator, like in just a big bin in a refrigerator in the garage, and they will keep for a long time. You have to watch and see which ones are starting to go bad. You can also put each one in like a little paper towel and it will keep them for quite a while. um, the other thing is we try to ferment as much as possible. I do green beans and my kids call them dilly beans. They love them. I do onions so I can have onions and just pull them out already cut and throw them in for soups or breakfast or whatever I'm making. Celery, carrots, and we do a lot of fermented pickles. And fermented pickles are a little tricky. I think I do teach that in my course that's free online because I want people to learn these skills. And then we freeze a lot that we are able to. Green chili, usually my kids are great about processing. We get a bushel or two of chili every year, and they'll process everything. And we put it into 1 pound bags, and then I can use it for chili relleno casserole or whatever it might be. My daughter and I just finished on just a few minutes ago. And we actually have dinner ready. We had a bushel of stuffed of peppers, bell peppers that I just got from the farm. So we made a huge batch of stuffed peppers. So I made fresh tomatoes that we picked from the farm. We just pureed them up, and then we stuffed all of our peppers. And I have dinner. So I have one batch for dinner tonight, and then I have 3 batches for dinners. For 3 more dinners. And I love that because a lot of times we do that on a busy night and everybody gets a whole stuffed pepper or two. It's almost like a bell pepper soup, and it's just so easy. Um, okay, so let me see. Okay. And then what was the other thing I was going to say? Oh, we like to do a lot of roasted beets, and I'll can beets as well. But roasted beets are just so amazing. And my kids, I do this, we call it pink pasta, and I don't put the pasta in for myself, but I think I put the recipe out, but it's pistachios and sausage and chicken sausage and beets that, oh my gosh, it's just an amazing flavor. You got to try it. It doesn't sound good, but when you see it, we're like, oh, wow, it tastes really good. Okay, so can what you can. So I did one class, I think, with this group. I've done 2 classes this year on canning. So I teach water bath canning as well as pressure canning, and it's really, really important. I was just talking to a friend who just water bath canned soup that had meat in it, and that's not healthy, that's not safe. So it's really, really important. I can't stress enough to follow good safety practices. I went to school at New Mexico State University and got my degree in home economics. And then I also worked for a little while at the extension office in one of the extension offices in New Mexico. So I learned the importance of following that they actually test it. So we were actually right near the test kitchen at our university where they would test and see what was safe and what wasn't. And so with meat and beans and most food, unless it's a certain acidity, and I teach that in my classes, or you can look it up, they should be pressure can with a pressure canner, not an Instant Pot. A lot of people say, "Oh, can I just use my Instant Pot?" No, because it has not been tested. You have to get it to a certain temperature for 90 minutes, and it takes a long time to get it up to pressure and down. So, but I will say canning is huge, because it does save us so much money. A lot of times when we travel, we do a lot of traveling, and I just have a crate of canned goods that are shelf stable that I can take with us when we travel. Like we did a 10-day trip up to Yellowstone and Glacier National Park and then back through Utah. And so we brought, I think, about 10 meals, and we ended up going out to eat because we had a special night and went out to eat and, spent a lot of money one night. But we were up, and when you're hiking in Glacier National Park, I mean, there's like some hamburger joints there, but it's not food that I want to eat, right? And we were out, we did everything from camping to hotels with nice hotels to staying in cabins to staying in places with kitchens and staying in like little hotels. And I just brought my Instant Pot and cooked all of our meals. We had different stuff. I tried to mix it up quite a bit. And my husband was like, "You had saved us at least $200." I mean, it was probably more than that if you think about it for 9 meals. And then we would pack our lunches and then I would have breakfast stuff. So, anyway, it can be not only a huge cost saving, but we feel so much better. Like when I'm traveling and I'm eating a whole bunch of junk food, I don't feel as good. So, usually we book a place with a kitchen because I like to cook my own food, and it's worth it to me, like, to put the investment into the kitchen, or I will just bring my Instant Pot and I can cook in any hotel room when we go skiing, at the end of the day. Instead of waiting in line and going somewhere and I'm exhausted, we can start the food, go to the hot tub and the pools, and then come back and eat. And it's just great. But I really do encourage learning to can. I know it's intimidating for people. I go through a whole thing and I explain that botulism is very rare. Like if you're following safe guidelines that they've studied, it rarely happens. Okay, so we try to avoid packaged foods as much as possible, ultra processed foods is what I'm trying to say. So if a food has a label, see if you can make it at home. That's kind of our thing that we try. Like, oh, we go to a restaurant and we're like, I wonder how they made this. This tastes really good. So a lot of times we'll ask and we'll give, wonderful compliments. Oh my goodness, it was so amazing. What did you put in here? And sometimes they'll tell you. And sometimes even the chef will come out and share with you. We learned to make some great recipes that way. And my husband is a good researcher and loves to cook too. So things like crackers and salad dressings and all these things you can make at home. Pasta, my husband likes pasta, so sometimes he'll make it at home. Yogurt and all those kinds of things. Any of your sauces, you can actually make those at home. And you're going to end up saving so much. I know so many people say, "How can you afford to eat mostly all organic and local?" And I said, "Well, once you're not buying all the junk food, you can't you can do it that way, because you end up saving money in the long run. So I'd rather put my money into good quality food and pay more for it, knowing that I'm not getting all the junk, if that makes sense. Okay. Um, Let me see. Find better. Yes. Thank you for the comment. I appreciate that. Okay. The one thing that I really have a challenge, I'm from New Mexico, and actually I was part of a food group in high school where we would make everything from scratch, which I loved. And then we had a restaurant. We actually were inspected I think it was every month. But anyway, I cannot make tortillas to save my life. So I do buy corn and flour tortillas. I still am not good at making cheese. I've made a few cheeses, but I just don't have the time to make cheese. But there's certain things. So if I'm not going to make those, and I know their process, then I really try to get a good quality. Okay, so of course, I love homeopathy. So I'm going to talk about saving on medications and medical supplies. So I teach homeopathy classes. That's one of my big passions, is giving families the tools and individuals the tools to be able to take control of their own health. And once you learn homeopathy, you don't want to go back. I mean, and honestly, it saves hundreds and thousands of dollars, especially if you can treat your animals, and your family, and you're prepared and you know what to do. You have the right books, you have a kit, and you have the resources. So I always recommend, especially we're heading into flu season, right? I've had all these people contacting me. I've even had people today who haven't even been able to respond. Oh my goodness, there's somebody that just contacted me. Their newborn is sick, just born actually, wow, not even a week old. What are we going to do? So, and she does homeopathy. She's been trained. So I've got to get back with her and tell her what to do. So she's really concerned because I'm like a newborn, but even newborns can take homeopathy. That's what's so beautiful about it. There aren't side effects. So I recommend getting a good kit. A good kit is under $200. I have this one right here, but you can buy whatever one is really good. This other one that's a boron one, it's a good starter kit, but it's not if you actually have the flu hit your household. Like when we had COVID hit in 2020, that kit did not last very long. Let's just put it that way. So I learned really quickly, okay, look through everything that my family, like my husband gets coughs and issues like that. So look through, my mother-in-law, she is 87 and she's more prone to pneumonia and those kind of issues. So I looked through and figured out everything, like I'm going to have these on hand just in case. So I recommend being stocked up and ready. And in the long run, it's going to save you money because I can't tell you how many people in late at night are contacting me. Oh my gosh, I don't have this remedy. Can I come to your house? And they'll come to my house 10 or 11 at night. Please help me. Otherwise, we're going to have to go to the urgent care or to the ER. Please, please help me. Do you have this? Do you have this? So I say, please make sure you have a good kit. Because when people get sick, it's usually late at night, on the weekends, during holidays, when you're traveling, it's not at convenient times. So if you and you always think, oh, I'll just be able to run to the store and buy that. Well, when during COVID, when I ran to the store, the one I needed was out. So I learned a really hard lesson. And when I ordered it, it took 4 weeks to get in. So I learned like I've got to have all my stuff. I carry it with me. I carry all my homeopathy. Well, not all, I carry about 45 with me at all times. And that way I can help others because people come to me all the time and you're prepared. So, harvest or buy herbs and tea. If you do that, tinctures, whatever. If you make tinctures, I make some tinctures myself. The other thing that's fun is I've gotten to know gardeners in our area, and I'm part of a Facebook group. And a lot of times they'll say, "Oh, I've got too much of this. Does anybody have anything to swap?" So I've been able to get some herbs that I couldn't grow from other people, or even vegetables, right? So if you, I just did another order for essential oils. I'm about to do another homeopathy big order. So if you use those things, make sure you know what you need, have it on hand, have it ready, and don't expect Amazon to have it because I ordered some homeopathic little kit holders and they still haven't come in. They were supposed to come in. I'm making them for people that are supposed to come in on Sunday and they still haven't come in. So the other thing I was going to give two homeopathic kits for the winter time. One is influenzainum 200, or actually, I think you can get it in a 6 as well. Once a month can greatly reduce your influenza in your family. So we usually take it once a month. Some people do it once a week. This is one that they actually make every year based on what is happening in the area, what is happening in the country, and it does sell out quickly. So I hesitated mentioning this because I don't know if Boron still has this one. I usually get it from a different source, but Boron usually does sell out of that fairly quickly. But it's a good one to help prevent because people say, well, what can I do to gear up my family? Another one is ferrum phosphoricum, which is a cell salt number 6, and it's taken once a day. I like if we're getting ready for a trip, or like my son's getting ready for a big theater production where they're going to be exhausted and practicing and show on stage for days at a time. I'll usually start this like a day or two before and try to give it to them every day. And then a couple days after the event, or if we go camping or we come back, because that's when we're more likely, when your immune system is pushed, is when you're more likely to get sick. So ferrum phos is another one to have on hand. And I'll also mention aconite 200 and bryonia 30 is great to have on hand, just for something that suddenly comes on quickly. And I probably what we're going to have to use one of those for this little one. Okay. Um, so I also suggest making your own cleaners and cosmetics as much as you can. And I have videos on all of that, so I won't go too much into that, but just saying that when I order like soap berries, and that helps make, which I need to make some more, it helps make my detergent. Those berries are actually grown on a tree, and when I'm done with them, I give them to my chickens. That's how biodegradable they are. Or you could put them in a compost pile if you have a composter. So I try to use as I make as little of an imprint on this environment as possible because I really believe it's God's creation and He's given it to us to treat well. And I try to do things that's less packaging, right? So, there's certain things I do buy, Castile soap. And the other thing I was going to mention is I've been using a shampoo bar and conditioner, and it's actually worked really well. I will have to say, like once a week, I've got to use at least the regular shampoo that has all the sudsing stuff. But this is all organic and it lasts for so long. And I think about how many like shampoo bottles that I'm saving because I'm not using and I'm not putting all those chemicals and all that stuff in there, right? Even though the really clean stuff, it's hard to get. The more I've learned about like making my own moisturizer and everything, it's really hard to get really clean ingredients. Okay, so when DIY isn't an option, try to buy larger quantities from a trusted source. For example, we have a guy here in town who I've known for years that he makes his own tallow, beef tallow products. And I've known him for years. He's very careful about where he gets his beef. They have to be completely clean, no antibiotics or anything given to him. It has to be all organic feed and everything. And he sells on Amazon, right? He has a big store, but he also sells at the farmers markets, and he will give us like boxes of stuff that people have returned or whatever or that failed, and so we get to try it that way. But I have that relationship with him, but at the same time I've still actually gone on Amazon and just bought his stuff if I couldn't get to it in time. So I'm also supporting someone local. I'm supporting a family as well as I know the source of what I'm getting. Okay, freezer meals. So this is fun for helping during those busy months and busy times. So we like to, like I said, either can or freeze our meals or just freeze the product itself. But I love to do this for like soups. And I find the best way, like some people do those big foil, what do you call them? To go container type things. I find those take too much space in my freezer. I found the best way to do it is to focus on soups. They're healthier anyway. And then do them in gallon bags and then lay them flat so that they freeze like that. And then you can stack them in your freezer and just grab them and go if you need to. And like was saying, I was just doing the stuffed peppers. I can't get those as flat because they're already stuffed, but I do freeze them in the bag with everything ready to go. And so, especially like on ski days when we ski all day, I can come back and my food is ready to go, right? It's so worth it. It's so worth the effort. So, if I'm already making something, why not triple it? Or quadruple it or whatever to get these meals ready. The other thing I used to do with friends is we used to have a freezer meal exchange. So we would get enough for 12. We had 12 weeks of our school program. So we would exchange so that after that school day that we could all have a meal ready for us. And that was so much fun because I would make 12 meals of the same thing. So yes, it was a lot of work, but then we had 11 weeks of, somebody else's meals. And that was so fun. The other thing I've done with friends is we did like a week thing where we would make a meal for the other family. So we did this with 3 families total, and we would go drop it off for them, and we would alternate like on and off weeks. And so that was just really fun. One, we got to try other people's food, and it took less effort. And at that point, we had really littles. At the time, it was just really hard to focus and get all those meals out. Okay, we talked about utilizing local ranchers. Sometimes you can barter. This is my son. He was processing a deer, I think, or maybe that was an elk. I can't remember. Um, but anyway, so it's for some people, hunting is a option. For other people, it is not, depending, of course, on where you live and what you have, what resources you have. Um, so I'll give another example of just trying to, make a connection. So I set up a whole homeschool tour with this mushroom grower who was in town, and he grows amazing. I mean, if you don't know about mushrooms, I need to do a whole thing on just mushrooms, but he grows lion's mane, which is really great for brain issues, cognitive issues. But he grows a whole bunch of different types. But I was really interested in getting the lion mane Maine's mushrooms. And so anyway, I set up this whole tour. We did this whole tour at his place. And of course, we all bought from him and supported him and everything. and he sells at the local farmers markets. Well, it turns out he later moved into our neighborhood, so he's not far from us, and he bought a big barn, and he's turning it into where he's going to grow his mushrooms. So I know, like sometimes I'll go over there and he'll give me his sawdust packs that he grows his mushrooms in, and then he even sells me the packs to actually grow the mushrooms in a plastic container. You spray it twice a day for about a month, and then all of a sudden you have all this mushroom, and you get about 3 to 4 harvests. But it's just a fun way to work with other people. We also had friends and neighbors that had goats and cows in our neighborhood, and so sometimes I would exchange food, or we would barter food since you can't legally sell raw milk in the state of Colorado. So we would barter stuff and go back and forth. So make those connections, make those friends. It's worth it. Okay, so reducing the price of drinks. So I recommend drinking water most of the time. I know that's a really strange thought process, but I seriously, I don't think kids, I think we're over dehydrated in this country, and especially when most people are drinking a lot of coffee and those kinds of things. So really focusing on getting the water in, and then buying things in bulk, so you can reduce a lot of your grocery bill just by reducing your the type of drinks that you have. Um, and I recommend, of course, instead of going to Starbucks or whatever, um, that you get your own coffee and get quality. And I drink mostly herbal tea and a little bit at night, and I buy it in bulk. Like if you buy a pound of tea that's organic, it's not very much, and you get a huge amount, and it lasts for a very long time. So the other thing is I teach that class on making kombucha, and that we literally make that for pennies. So I buy some organic quality juice from the store that's in glass, but you can also buy like the big ones too. Sometimes you can get the gallons. And then I can get even one of those small glass containers to last for 3 gallons of kombucha. So I'm only, I don't know how much that would equate to, because I only let the kids have kombucha once a day. Otherwise, we have to drink water, and then we do have a smoothie in the morning sometimes. But other than that, we only have a little bit of kombucha, so I can make it stretch. And so if you think about it, I'm buying quality juice, but it's lasting like at least a week or two. Let's say at least 2 weeks, okay? And so it's worth it. I see so many people spending so much money on bottled water. I feel like just investing in a good filtration system is probably a better way to go if you can. Obviously, if you're somewhere and you can't have access to that, I understand that. So anyway, okay, I think that may be oops. It's almost okay. So I just wanted to close with this. I love this verse, where he satisfies the thirsty and fills the hungry with good things. Psalm 107:9. And I just believe that our Creator has given us so many beautiful um, options in this environment, and so much food, that he does satisfy us and he does care for us. So I'm going to go ahead and stop my share and see if I can stop the recording. Still.